I'm going to start out here looking at for loops and how you can do the same thing different ways. And if you're following along the book, this is on page 64, and Gries talks about how some ways are more elegant or less elegant, meaning that some could increase the speed, reduce memory requirements, and so on and so forth. And so to look at three different ways, he has us read in 4 vectors, and those same 4 vectors are in a file that we worked with before. So I'm going to start off reading in that file. So I'm going to put that into X, read table, and I can see how it starts. I like to choose the files, and I actually liked how this worked before, so that if I typed it in correctly, then it goes right there, and if not, then I can find it. So since I typed it in before, I'm going to do that. And you can see that I already looked up read table, but just to see how I did that, again, I do the question mark read table. I have an extra quotation mark. So then this reminds me of the arguments that go into it, and this one does have a header, so I need to say it's true. The default is without the separator, so I'm going to do a tab separator since that's what most of them have that I'm working with, and the quote equals double quotation so that it disables it. And I noticed most of the ones that he did the comment character as well, so I'm just going to do that also. So let me read it in. Pops up. Looks like it's right since it didn't give me any error, so I'm going to say open it. And there it is. So I'm going to display it. Now these are the same categories that he had, but he put them into vectors. So if you want to do it the same way that he did, he just made them as part of speech, then put it in here all together with everything that was in the first column, and then ran that. Now I'm not going to run it since I already have it in a data frame, so I'm just going to skip past that. But since I still want to be able to access the columns, I'm going to attach X. So now if I want to see what is in part of speech, then I see that same vector right there. It's in a data frame, so it shows the levels. So the first thing that he is having us do is see how we would sum the token frequencies of everything that is open and sum the frequencies of everything that is closed. And using a for loop would have us basically step through all the frequencies in the whole table. So we'll do that first. And one of the ways to do that is to set up kind of a counter of the frequencies that are open and that are closed. So I'm going to set those. And then to enter in the for loop. So if it were a larger data set, we would need to do it differently to find out how many rows. But since we see here that there's just 5, then I'll do 1 through 5 and then open it. So the way that he suggests doing it is, I'll go ahead and do it this way, even though I prefer to do it a different way, and I'll show how I prefer to, just because it can be less lines even than this. So this is setting up that we're going to look at one class at a time. And then if that current class equals closed, and then we have to do our curly bracket. Then we sum it into the closed well, what's a good way to call it? Into what we're summing our closed into. So then we'd keep adding it into it. For what is in that location. So what I prefer to do to make it a little bit closer right here, this is basically saying current class is class at the first location, then the second, third, fourth, and fifth, and so on. So what I'm going to do is just put that right into here and take out this line. That makes sense to me. They both make sense. Okay, so then else, so if it's not closed, then it'll be open, and we'll sum the open with token frequency in that location. So then we close it and close it. So we're starting out with 0 and 0. Let's see if this works. And those are the same numbers that we would expect if we were to add up the open and add up the close. So that's one way, using for loops. He's also suggesting we could use just plain the sum function and say token frequency, and then we want to say which one's out of there, where class equals closed. Let's run that and see. We can double check that it is. When I was doing this, I wanted to go back and see just a few of the parts to make sure I knew what was happening. And this should give us the locations. Did I run it? Oh, I didn't run it. So the fourth and fifth ones are where the closed are. I want to say, okay, how does sum work? Just to remind myself again. So it's summing basically a vector. And the vector has those two numbers in it, and that's what it's summing. So if that makes sense. If we want to see just two lines that would get us the very same thing that the other four statements did, open and closed, and we have both of them right there. So those are two ways. The very last one says we can do this all with tapply. So we can take token frequency. So it's taking from this category applying this, let's see, let's see if this gives a good explanation. So it's taking this category, okay, so the way that this is describing it is as an index. I liked it also that he described it as this is the list of factors that it's going to count by. And then the last one is the function that it's going to apply to everything in that by those factors. And in this case, it is sum. So we can run it, and they're in just one line, open and close, and it's the same numbers that we've been getting. And we'll stop there.